General Colin Powell is the sort of American public figure who offers a lot of politicians a lot of political cover. There's not a lot of risk, especially if you're a Republican, to saying, I'm with General Powell on this or that subject. And so it has been regarding the military's don't ask, don't tell policy. Back in 1993, General Powell was opposed to gay people serving openly in the military. And as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he persuaded Congress and the Clinton administration to adopt the don't ask, don't tell policy. At the 1993 Senate Armed Services Committee hearings on gays in the military, General Powell said that there are, quote, those of us who believe that the presence of open homosexuality would have an unacceptable, detrimental, and disruptive impact on the cohesion, morale, and esprit of the armed forces. I also know that this is not the end of the matter. The debate will continue. I also don't pretend to know where the nation will be on this issue years in the future. As recently as last summer, politicians as seasoned and mavericky as Senator John McCain were using General Powell's position to justify their own. Speaking to our pal Anna Marie Cox on Air America Radio, Mr. McCain said that he relied on General Powell's opinion.
My opinion is shaped by the view of the leaders of the military. The reason why I supported the policy to start with was because General Colin Powell, who was then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is the one that strongly recommended we adopt this policy in the Clinton administration. I have not heard General Powell or any of the other military leaders reverse their position.
Well, now General Powell has reversed his position. Today, releasing this statement, quote, in the almost 17 years since the Don't Ask, Don't Tell legislation was passed, attitudes and circumstances have changed. I fully support the new approach presented to the Senate Armed Services Committee this week by Secretary of Defense Gates and Admiral Mullen, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You know, if this were the part of Senator McCain's career in which he earned that reputation for being the principled maverick of the Senate, Senator McCain would put out a statement now saying that in light of General Powell's remarks, he's reconsidering his policy position because McCain always said that position was based on General Powell's advice. I don't think this is that part of Senator McCain's career anymore, but we'll see. Joining us now is Pennsylvania Democratic Congressman Patrick Murphy. He's an Iraq War veteran. He has taken the lead in the House in the effort to repeal the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy as a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Murphy, thanks very much for joining us.
Hey, Rachel, thanks so much for having me back on the show.
How important is General Powell's change of heart on this subject?
Absolutely huge. The fact that General Powell, Secretary Gates, Admiral Mullen, these past 2 days have been a tremendous success in our efforts to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
In today's House Armed Services Committee hearing, you and another veteran, Pennsylvania Democratic Congressman Joe Sestak, who's a retired Navy admiral, you both expressed skepticism that the Pentagon needs a year-long process to figure out how to implement a change in this policy. Why are you skeptical?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I had them on record, but they were very clear, Rachel. It wasn't a question of if they were going to do this. It was a question of how. So now we have a dual-track process. Basically, the Congress needs to act. We need to overturn the law that the Congress put in place almost 17 years ago. At the same time, the Pentagon, because the military leadership has been very clear that they want to repeal it, are now figuring out how they're going to do that. They said they're going to get done this calendar year. They're not going to delay, and I thought that was a tremendous statement by Secretary Gates today.
So you feel like the implementation study and review process that they're talking about, updating the RAND study, some of the other things that the Secretary and the Chairman talked about yesterday, you feel like that's essentially an appropriate timeline in terms of getting this done as quickly as it can be done?
And they were very clear, Rachel, because that was my question today in the Armed Services hearing, that it was a question of doing it this calendar year and how they're going to implement the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So now we have the president, we have the top military leadership of our country, and now it is time for the Congress to act, to do the right thing, to stand up for those men and women that are willing to take a bullet for our country to defend us, to allow them to serve openly.
When we last talked about your bill to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the House, it was very memorable. You said that your strategy was to personally, individually, you yourself lobby every single member of the House on the matter. I got to ask how it's going.
It's going great. Since the last time I was on, we got 35 new members of Congress to be co-sponsor this bill. So now we're up to 187 co-sponsors. I have about 24 more folks in the Congress that said they're going to vote for it if it comes up for a vote. And we're working every day to get even more. And we will have the votes when it comes up for a vote this year.
It feels to me right now, as opposed to 1993, that the opposition on this is a little incoherent, that they're a little confused. And I don't think that's wishful thinking because of how everybody knows I feel about this policy. It just seems to me like it's unsustainable now for opponents of repealing this policy to say that they're on the military side while they're siding against Admiral Mullen and General Powell and General Shalikashvili. Do you have a sense of what you're up against, about what the strategy is on the other side of this now?
They're going to throw everything at us. And, you know, Bobby Kennedy once said that change has enemies and change is hard. So I am not taking anything for granted, even though we have the past two chairmen of Joint Chiefs of Staff, well, two former ones, Shalikashvili, Colin Powell, and now the current one, Admiral Mullen, and the Secretary of Defense, and the Commander-in-Chief, and frankly, the American public. I am not taking anything for granted. We need to make sure that we get this done this year. We act with a sense of urgency. There are so many heroes that are serving right now in our armed services that are one day or 1 month away from being turned in because they happen to be gay. Not for any type of sexual misconduct, but just because they're gay. It's wrong. It hurts our national security, and that's why we need to change it.
Iraq War veteran and Pennsylvania Democratic Congressman Patrick Murphy, you've been a real champion on this issue, and we are grateful that you make the time to talk to us about it. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks so much.